Hey everyone, welcome to Play Hooky with me. My name is Roz, and in today's video I'm going to share how to finger knit a tree skirt. This is a quick and easy project that doesn't require any previous experience with knitting or crocheting. All you need are your fingers, some yarn, and about an hour of your time. In this video I'll first share the pattern tutorial, and then at the end of the video I'll share some tips on how you can easily resize and adapt this pattern to fit your needs. The tree skirt that you see in the video today measures 32 inches in diameter, and I used 2 skeins of the Bernat blanket big to do this. This easily covered my tree stand, but if you want this to be bigger to extend out to your branches, you may need about 3 skeins. This yarn is washer and dryer safe, and all the details for the care of it are on the label. I always use the low temperatures and settings on both the washer and the dryer, and I've had no issues so far. I've added timestamps along the progress line as well as under the video in the description box so you can jump straight to your point of interest. So let's just dive right in. To get started, we're going to make our slip knot and our first chain. Just take the tail in your hand, wrap the yarn around your fingers, pull through, tighten with your tail, and this will form your chain. You can make this bigger or smaller just by pulling on the working yarn here. I'm going to make mine about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Now we're going to make 15 more chains to make a total of 16. Just pull the yarn through that previous loop to form a chain. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 16. To work on row 1, we're just going to be working into the top of the chains that we just completed. So since I started with a chain of 16, I want to see 16 loops. I'm also going to be referring to these loops as knits. So essentially here we're going to knit 16. Working with that last chain, go ahead and pinch through, pull up to form your first loop. I'm making these about 1.5 to 2 inches. Continue this all the way across. Just pinch into the top of that chain and pull a loop through. Don't forget this last chain here. It's a bit tighter than the others. Just pull through. Okay, double check that you have the same amount of loops as you did with your starting chain. I need 16. Okay, we're good to go, and now we're ready for row 2. Row 2 is super easy. We're just going to knit our way back across. Starting with that one we just finished, pull your yarn through, and then continue all the way across. Quick tip here, make sure that the sides of your loops are parallel to each other. You don't want twisting. We're ready for row 3, so we're going to start our increase. For this particular chain count, we're making multiples of 8 for each increase row. To do an increase, it's really easy to do. We're going to create 2 loops and then add 1. 2 loops, then add 1. I'm going to refer to this as knitting and increasing. So we're going to knit 2, starting in that loop you just finished. 2. And now we're going to add 1. You have a couple of options here where you can add it. You can either add it in this little space right here where there's a bar, or you can do it in this little space between the loop above and the loop below. There's a little gap there that you can go in and pinch through. Completely up to you, either way. This one's a little bit easier to do, so I'm just going to do that. Because it is a little bit lower, you want to pull your loop up to match the height of your other loops. We're going to repeat this all the way across. Knit 2, increase, knit 2, increase, knit 2, increase. Just pull a loop through. We have 2 loops left over. We're right on track. We have 1 more increase to do. And what I like to do is just add it into the little loop right here. If you're following along with my stitch count, you should have 24 after this row 3. For row 4, we're just going to complete a knit stitch in all of the top of these, no increasing. Just pull a loop all the way back to the beginning. We're on row 5, and remember we're doing an increase on all the odd rows. So we're going to do another multiple of 8. To do that, instead of knitting 2, we're going to knit 3 first and then add an increase. Knit 3, 1, 2, 3, increase. 1, 2, 3, increase. We've come back to the end and I see I have 3, we're spot on. So we're going to knit into these and then add an extra one at the very end. 1, 2, and 3 with an increase. I'm just going to tuck it in right next to that loop. At this point you should have 32 stitches if you're following my chain count. Now we're just going to knit our way back across. For row 7, we're back on an increase row. So now instead of knitting 3 and then increasing, now we're going to knit 4 and increase. And I hope you can see the sequence here now. It's just going to be moving up incrementally from 2, 3, 4, 5, just continuing to increase in this kind of way until you reach the width that you want. So here for row 7, I'm going to knit 4 and then increase 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, add an increase, and then continue on all the way across. I've added the sequence down in the description box below so you can refer back to that. But just remember that you're going to be increasing on the odd rows and then just knitting your way back across on the even rows. To add a new ball of yarn, take the tails from both and point them in opposite directions. All we're doing is making 2 ties. We're going to tie this end here and then this end here. Just tie like you would a shoelace. Then tie this one here. And then pull them towards each other. This is my favorite technique for making a knot for 2 reasons. One, it's not going to come out. You can cut as close to this as you like, and it takes up the least amount of yarn. To finish your blanket, I recommend that you finish on an even row. That means that you're doing a knit row instead of an increase row. For example, here on mine, I used 2 skeins of yarn and I finished on row 12. Just for gauge, row 12 for me is a stitch count of 56. Now at this point you want to make sure to reserve quite a bit of yarn. This is because you're going to be making your loops a lot larger than you were before. So I have about 100 grams left over here, or about 13 yards. This may take some trial and error when you get to the end, but you just want to make sure that you make these loops extra large because you want this to lie flat. If you make your loops too short, it's going to curl up on you. And how large do you need to make these loops? I would recommend that you go ahead and pull this through and just fit your hand inside. That's a pretty good length. That's about 3 inches. So just continue all the way around doing this, making extra large loops. Take the side that has the working yarn or the tail on it and move it to the side. We're going to work towards that, forming our edge. To form your edge, it's really easy to do. We're just going to feed these loops into each other until we get to the tail side. This is the very last one. Keep it in your hand. Take the one to the left of it and feed it through. Continue this all the way across, taking the one to the left and feeding it into the one on the right. We're on our last one. Pull it through, and then taking your tail that you have left over, feed it through that final loop. And then at this point, you can just take your tail and weave it into the threads behind. If you plan on washing this, then you can go ahead and tack it in with a needle and thread if you like as well. But for right now, I'm just going to weave it in. To resize your tree skirt, it's really easy to do. You just need a couple of sizes to get you started. You want the diameter of the size that you want your tree skirt to be and the diameter of the base of your tree or of your tree stand. One of the easiest ways to figure this out is to use a pre-existing tree skirt that you already have to do the measurements. To do this, just take a tape measure and measure the width of your tree skirt from one side to the other. This will give you your diameter. And then to figure out the opening, just wrap your tape measure around the center to get that measurement as well. This is where you'll figure out your chain count. If you don't have a tree skirt, then you can take a tree stand if you have it already and measure that. Measure the width of that to get the diameter to make sure that you're covering the tree stand. If you want your tree skirt to extend out to the branches of your tree, then you want to measure the diameter of the base of your tree. Once you've figured out the opening size that you want to start with, just go ahead and chain up to that measurement. For example, mine was a chain of 16. If you want to use a different chain count, that's no problem at all. Just make sure that you're working with an even number. This way it'll be very easy to make your multiple for the increased rows. Once you've decided on your chain count, divide that by 2 to figure out the multiple that you'll be using for your increased rows. For example, I started with a chain of 16, divided by 2, that's 8. So my increased multiple was 8. Let's say, for example, you decide to chain up to 20, your multiple would be 10. And then once you have this information, you're ready to just follow the pattern as you were, and you should be good to go. Some of you may be wondering if you can use a different size yarn to work on this project, and absolutely you can. This is a beautiful velvet velour yarn that would work out beautifully for this. However, just keep in mind that it is very slippery and hard to work with, so your loops will tend to fall out as you're working. I do have a video to give some tips on how to work with the smaller yarn, but like I said, just be patient with this because it is a little bit more difficult to work with.